First up today on CNN Student News, spotlighting the United Nations General Assembly. It's the 70th session of the International Organization of 193 countries. Yesterday, there were 5 world leaders we told you we were keeping an eye on. U.S. President Barack Obama focused part of his speech on climate change and part on Syria's civil war. He called Syrian President Bashar al-Assad a tyrant who kills innocent children. Russian President Vladimir Putin's speech came later. He also addressed Syria, but said its government was fighting terrorists and that not cooperating with Syria's leadership would be a mistake. Chinese President Xi Jinping discussed the environment, saying China would do its part to reduce pollution. And Cuban President Raul Castro, in his first ever speech at the UN, acknowledged diplomatic relations had been reestablished between the U.S. and Cuba, but said the U.S. would have to lift its economic embargo and do a lot more before things could be normal between the two countries. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani addressed the controversial nuclear deal involving his country and 6 other nations led by the U.S. He said the deal should contribute to sustainable peace and stability in the Middle East, and that the U.S. was, quote, forced to set aside pressure and sanctions and choose discussions instead. U.S. congressional efforts to reject the deal stalled weeks ago in the Senate, which means the Obama administration's deal with Iran will go through. But what about the next U.S. administration?
So the Iranian deal is more than 50 pages long. It's got a lot of documents, annexes, supplements. It's, really easy to boil it down to a few sound bites or a few bullet points, but it's a very technical and complex agreement. President Obama has moved ahead with the deal despite intense criticism from Republicans and the fact that the majority of Americans are against it.
This is a bad deal with decades-long consequences.
This deal is not just important to the United States or to international security. It's very important to Israel's security. Israel sees an Iranian nuclear weapon as a threat to its existence and wants to stop that at all costs. Not surprisingly, there were a lot of differing views on how the 2016 candidates would treat the Iran deal.
If I'm president, that deal won't survive.
Rip to shreds this catastrophic deal.
Never, ever, ever in my life have I seen any transaction so incompetently negotiated.
The problem here is 5 other countries negotiated this deal with Iran for the past 2 years along with the United States, and it was endorsed by the UN Security Council. U.S. credibility is on the line.
Is it perfect? Well, of course not. But is it a strong agreement? Yes, it is. And because we've proven our commitment to diplomacy first, the world will more likely join us.
As I believe that this approach is the best way forward.
Now, I'm going to vote against the agreement because I don't think there's significant leverage, but it doesn't mean that I would immediately not look at the agreement and cut it up without looking to see whether Iran is complying.
But despite all the bluster, it's really going to come down in the end to what Iran does. If it plays by the rules and curbs its nuclear program for the next 10 to 15 years, that's one thing. But if Iran doesn't and cheats, then the next commander-in-chief will have some pretty tough decisions to make. And he or she is going to need the rest of the world on their side.
Big announcement from NASA yesterday regarding Mars. It said that from time to time, water flows across the red planet's ancient surface. This does not mean scientists have found life on Mars or proof there ever has been. They say it offers hope that some microorganisms, like bacteria, might have one of the elements there they need to survive.
NASA has found something that breathes new hope to the idea that microbial life may be present on the red planet: liquid water.
Under certain circumstances, liquid water has been found on Mars.
Using its Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, NASA has proven that seasonal dark streaks on the surface of the planet, called recurring slope linea, are caused by the flow of water. Now, this water isn't pure, it's briny, filled with a special kind of salt called percolate salts. This is important because the salt almost acts like an antifreeze, lowering the freezing point of the water, allowing it to stay in a liquid state. Scientists have long known that the Mars of 3 billion years ago was very wet, possibly even boasting a massive ocean 1 mile deep. But most of that water has since disappeared, and scientists have only been able to find evidence of water in the form of ice, most of it being trapped at the poles and some small amounts of water in the atmosphere. Now that we've found liquid water, not only does it increase our chances at finding life, it may also help humans survive on the planet one day.
We haven't been able to answer the question, does life exist beyond Earth? But following the water is a critical element of that.
The presence of liquid water could change the architecture of NASA's manned mission to Mars, scheduled for the 2030s. The water could be purified for irrigation, turned into oxygen, even broken down into liquid oxygen and hydrogen, and then used for rocket fuel. The problem is, scientists don't know the source of the water, but are exploring different theories like underground aquifers. One thing's for sure, the search for life on Mars just got a whole lot more exciting.
Unless you live in an area where there was a lot of cloud cover, like we do, unfortunately, Sunday night was a great one for stargazing. Or let's say moon gazing. First reason, there was a lunar eclipse when the sun, earth, and moon were all lined up in that order. Scientists say because Earth's atmosphere filters out blue light, the moon, or part of it, can take on a reddish tint, what some call a blood moon. Here you can see the effect this has on our natural satellite. Second reason, a supermoon. In the moon's elliptical orbit around Earth, it was at perigee, its closest point. That made it appear larger than usual. Time to take three. Three of the schools watching today and making one request on our transcript page at CNNStudentNews.com. Like the international school Manila. It's in Manila, the capital of the Philippines. Stateside, we're stopping by Iowa. It's where we heard from Four Oaks Residential Treatment. It's in the city of Independence. And in another I state, we're talking about Idaho. We've got the Phoenix watching at Lincoln High School. In eastern North Carolina, there's a town called Canida, population 300. Despite being surrounded by farmland, the nearest grocery store is 10 miles away, making this town a food desert. The pastor of Canida Chapel Missionary Baptist Church decided to do something about that. He started the Canida Family Life Center, a nonprofit that enlists dozens of young people to harvest almost 50,000 pounds of food a year. He's today's character study.
Canida is a community with poverty. It's a rural area, but also a food desert that do not have access to fresh, affordable food. I've been the pastor here 12 years. Early on, I was spending more time in funerals than anything else. Diabetes, high blood pressure, unhealthy lifestyles. I had to do something.
If you take what you have, God can transform your health situation, your food desert situation.
I could not grow food by myself, so I had to come through the community. All right, come on guys, who won't do eggplants? It's intergenerational, but the children, they're responsible for planting, cultivating, and also harvesting the food. One of our goals is to get as much fresh food in the homes as possible. It makes the families healthier. It's a game changer. This garden has changed our community life. It's a place where we can produce. It's a place we can play. It's a place where we can live.
Olive Trees is a landscape painting by Vincent van Gogh. It was completed in 1889. This copy of Olive Trees is by Stan Hurd. It was completed in 2015. And it's also a landscape. Literally. Stan Hurd is an earthworks artist, and what you're looking at is his arrangement of plants, soil, and mulch, an all-natural recreation of the Olive Trees picture. It was commissioned by the Minneapolis Institute of Art and took 6 months of hard work to complete. Made for a great story before we Van Gogh. It didn't take much to convince us to air it. We always plant on something fun, and you just never know what's going to crop up on CNN Student News or how many puns we'll cultivate. I'm Carl Azus, and it's time for me to go.